So we're ready for our main talk now. Mike is going to be giving the main talk today. He is the executive director of Houston Oasis and has obviously been a very integral part of this organization. He's given a number of very insightful presentations, and the conversations afterwards have always been absolutely wonderful. And I think it's opened the door for all of us to kind of really think about why we think what we think, and really develop ourselves as well. One of his quotes that I really like, and that I think puts the foundation to Houston Oasis, is when he said, regardless of theological orientation, there's some kind of deeply ingrained basic human need for community. Homo sapiens are a tribal species that need support from others that cannot be denied. And that is the foundation of Oasis, and that is Mike Gauss. The title of his talk today is going to be Living with Our Lizard Brains.
If you're newer to the Oasis community, I don't do this every week, so I don't want you to think we're in a rut or something like that. We're all about bringing different voices to the table. It just so happened that I was doing it 2 weeks in a row. But we have some fantastic guest speakers over the next 4 weeks. Gosh, scheduling some really exciting ones into 2015 already. So stay tuned. Next week we have author, journalist, and speaker David McCaffey here, coming in from California just to speak to us. Let's get the word out about that. And actually, Josh Hoogerwerf in the back helped kind of make that connection, make it all possible. So we're excited about that. But please help get the word out. David, this is going to be a great event next week. But this week, you're stuck with me. So on Monday night, I was out to dinner with my dad at a nice seafood place. And being the night before election on Tuesday, we were chatting politics a little bit, doing a little armchair quarterbacking, thinking about what might happen the next day and what the implications might be. And since it was Monday night, it was kind of quiet at the restaurant, and a couple came in and they were seated kind of a little bit off to our back, but off to the side to the table next to us. And because it was quiet in there, you could hear conversations at the other tables. You could hear what people were talking about. And I noticed as I was talking to my dad that the guy in the couple started to act a little agitated. I kind of see it out the side of my... And then I heard him say something kind of disparaged our politics. And then finally he threw down his napkin and said, "This is ridiculous." And he got up and walked over to the manager to be seated. And so when I saw him get up, I kind of turned over. Up to this point, we've had no contact whatsoever. Having a conversation with my dad, okay? And so I turned around, and the woman of the couple was sitting at the table. The guy had gone to talk to the manager, and she was just looking at me with the evil eye, like you would not believe, seething. And she looked at me and said, "Shut up! Just shut up!" Like this. In a nice seafood restaurant. And I'm like, "Ooh, okay." And so then he came back with the manager, and they picked up their stuff to move to another table. And as they left, I couldn't really resist saying something. I said something like, "Well, I guess you guys don't believe in free speech either, do you?" Or something like that. I don't know. I had a couple of glasses of wine. I mean, why do I have to roll over and play dead for these people all the time? But anyway, and that was all I said. I didn't say anything else. Didn't even look at him. So we continued with our dinner in peace. But the thing was, the whole thing kind of cast a pall over the proceedings. And a couple things struck me about the incident. First of all, the look of sheer rage on the woman's face. And then the impact that her rage had on me. Hundreds of human faces crossed my field of vision last week, but that's the one that's burned into my hard drive. And I didn't decide to do that. My brain decided that for me. Sensing that I was under attack, some combination of testosterone and adrenaline and who knows what else combined to put me in a fight or flight mode. Emotions are crazy, powerful things, aren't they? Some bloggers in the free thought world, I've noticed, have taken to denigrating, just really completely dismissing the whole concept of evolutionary psychology, that it can tell us anything important about humans today. And it just seems a little off to me, because I mean, we all experience it all the time, every day. Emotions are just chemical reactions in our brain, right? That's all they are. They're just chemical reactions that have been honed over millions of years in the ancestral environment, things that enabled our ancestors to survive, and then we inherited their emotions. But almost every day, at some level, we have the experience of some more primitive part of our brain overriding the more lately developed, evolved, rational, executive functioning of the brain. Biologist E.O. Wilson puts it very well in his latest book. I highly recommend it if you don't have it yet. It's called The Meaning of Human Existence. And he writes, "The human mind did not evolve as an externally guided progression toward either pure reason or emotional fulfillment. It remains, as it always has been, an instrument of survival that employs both reason and emotion." I like that. It's really powerful. Our brain is an instrument of survival that employs both reason and emotion. It's always been that way, always will be that way. So since I've been thinking about this stuff in preparation for today's talk, I've been trying to pay closer attention to how that happens in my own life and the ways my older lizard brain preempts my younger Homo sapiens part of my brain, and the ways that emotion trump reason. So here's just a couple examples for me, and then you guys can think about your own, because I'm sure it happens to you too. Okay, honestly, when I first heard about the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, my gut response was, keep them out of here. Travel ban on these guys. I mean, I'm just being honest, that's what I felt. We don't want that stuff coming over here. We can go help them, don't bring that Ebola over here. But then I started to think about, well, how would you implement a travel ban? And so the gut response was, keep them away. But then when you start thinking, well, wait a second, there aren't a lot of direct flights from Africa to the United States. A lot of people transfer in, London and Amsterdam or wherever to get over here. How are you going to really check to see if people have been there or haven't been there? And then if someone comes over and they're exhibiting symptoms, well, you just can't put them on a plane to go back with people that aren't affected. You have to have a special Ebola plane. And I mean, seriously, or you have to have an Ebola camp and keep them there for 21 days at the airport, or I don't know. And so you start thinking about logistics, and it's yeah, this isn't going to work. So, and you realize that the authorities really couldn't do that. But some politicians kept on calling for a travel ban, even though they knew darn well it was not feasible and couldn't work. But they kept calling for a travel ban because they knew it would play on the fears of the electorate, appealing to the lizard brain. Second example of my lizard brain. On Thursday night, we had a Houston Oasis marketing team meeting at Ventropolis Wine Bar, lovely place. Many of you have been there. And I got to Ventropolis, I got my wine at the bar, and I was going to the back room that we often reserve for our meetings. But I didn't know if anyone had remembered to reserve it or not, I don't know, but I just went back there. But I was on my way to the back room, and it's this huge crowd of people standing in between me and the doorway to the back room. People I haven't seen before. And I'm thinking, what? There's clearly some kind of event going on here. I didn't see any other Oasis people here that, so rather than walk through the crowd to check to see if anyone was in the back room, I opted to sit out front and wait for friendly Oasis faces to show up. And I'm a fairly extroverted person. I generally enjoy being around people. But I experienced a strong hesitation, almost like a force field telling me, don't walk through that crowd of strangers. It was like a wall. It was like I don't want to do that. I want to sit outside and wait for my friends to show up. I don't want to walk through all the people I didn't know. It felt like crashing a party. They were dressed better than me. It felt like I was someplace I didn't belong. I mean, have you had that feeling before? Okay, so then I remember reading that the fear of large groups of unknown people is really common, And it probably evolved because of our distant ancestors faced injury or death that they stumbled across a raiding party of an enemy tribe. In reality, the group of people at Ventropolis Wine Bar were just a bunch of nice folks from the oil industry sharing wine together, perfectly nice people. But my lizard brain was telling me, enemy tribe. Danger, Will Robinson, right? I don't know if anyone gets it, lost in space. Yeah, okay, something like that. Yeah. Again, let me summarize E.O. Wilson. I have to get a different podium next week. This thing is like the paper slide. It would fall right off. Okay. Something weird about this. I guess it's made for like a laptop because people don't use paper anymore, do they? That's what, I want to read just another quick E.O. Wilson quote, which sums it up nicely. We are hampered by a Paleolithic curse. Genetic adaptations that worked very well for millions of years of hunter-gatherer existence are increasingly a hindrance in a globally urban and techno-scientific society. And that really sums up well kind of the modern human dilemma. Of course, the powers that be know this, maybe instinctively, I don't know, but they know this and they use this to their advantage all the time. Corporations, politicians, media all use fear to manipulate us on so many different levels, right? Corporations use fear to sell us their products, right? The whole, I never would have known gingivitis was a problem until I saw an ad about it, I guess. And then the whole teeth whitening obsession thing. If you don't have white enough teeth, your friends are going to reject you, and you're going to be cast out of the tribe. And then I was watching the PBS documentary about the Roosevelts, which was awesome, by the way. And all the footage in the 1930s and 1940s, apparently they didn't care about teeth in the 1930s and 1940s. Everybody's teeth are all gnarly, and it didn't bother anybody, even the most powerful people in the world. But now, be afraid if your teeth aren't white enough, right? So corporations use that to their advantage. Politicians obviously use fear to get people to vote for them. Are we like the only democracy in the world where a politician running for office has to be seen with a picture holding a gun? So, if you want people to vote, you got guns. I don't know. Nothing against guns, but it's like, is that necessary to, protect the border and the bad people and the enemy raiding tribes? Lizard brain at work in those commercials. And then the media, of course, really excels at using fear to keep us watching their programs. Of course, it's not just the news where they feature the fear, and if it leads, versus the whole thing with headlines. But we even like fake fear, right? Like Walking Dead or Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad is like, man, total lizard brain engagement, and I can't get enough of it, right? It's fun to feel that fear, but it's definitely lizard brain engagement with that stuff. So the net result of all the fear-mongering that's going on is the population becomes convinced that we are under attack from Ebola-infected terrorists crossing our southern border to kidnap our children, right? With bad teeth, yeah, right? And so research tells us that constant low-grade stress, like many of us are exposed to all the time, inhibits oxytocin, which in turn blocks dopamine and serotonin, all of which combines to inhibit our ability to feel empathy. There are chemical reasons for all of this stuff. And that is why a lady yelled at me at the restaurant this week. Seriously. So what's the antidote? Well, okay, like I said before, I'm an English major. I have no business talking about neuroscience, but here's just one uneducated guess from my humble perspective. If our fear response mechanism is basically being bombarded all the time, it would probably behoove us to cultivate and focus. So I think since we're, probably exposed to abnormal kind of amount of fear is hitting our sensory intake all the time, that we kind of have to fight back. Because it's an unnatural level of fear and stress that we're exposed to. So it would make sense to me to maybe focus and cultivate more, experiences that do boost dopamine and serotonin to kind of take the edge off a bit. Scientists out there, does that make any sense at all? Just nod. Just say, maybe? Okay. Thanks for all the affirmation. Okay. Of course, now that's going to look different for different people because we're all wired differently. For some people it's fishing, for some people it's quilting, for some people it's driving motorcycles. But there are a few experiences of emotional uplift that seem to work for large segments of humanity. So here's 3 of them. Music. Magical. Music can be a source of rapture, and it has been demonstrated to release dopamine. Most of us have at some point experienced goosebumps or maybe even been moved to tears by beautiful music, right? I mean, it happens here all the time. Music has been a part of, and also this is actually yet more evidence of evolution at work in our lives, because music, we're hardwired for music in ways that go back. I mean, it's been an integral part of human experience for tens of thousands of years. The oldest musical instruments found to date back to like 30,000 years ago, which is mind-boggling. Little stone flutes and stuff that people were. So we have used music to integrate and integrate our groups or build social cohesion for tens of thousands of years. So we are hardwired for music in a way, let's say we are not hardwired for math, okay? Music is a source of rapture for most people. Math is a source of rapture for very few people. If math is a source of rapture for you, you're strange. Now, strange in a good way, it's like, all more power to you, but that's not normal. So music. Another one, community, which Verena alluded to, and Eric as well. Gathering with others, living life in community can have a similar effect. And I've talked about this before, but people who are part of supportive communities, and the research is just stunning on this, experience lower blood pressure, stronger immune systems, and definite boost in dopamine and serotonin just by being around, not being around the enemy raiding tribe, but being around your tribe, being around people, people you feel comfortable with. The benefits of belonging to a tribe are undeniable. Third, good stories. Expose yourself to good stories. Here again, evolution has hardwired our brains to crave narrative. For a variety of reasons having to do with the way the human brain developed, we are addicted to stories about other people, and it will always remain this way. Gossip, novels, dramas, movies, TV shows. We cannot get enough of them, can we? From Seinfeld to Big Bang Theory, we love stories of, I have even, from time to time on the classic TV channel, watching some old reruns of the Andy Griffith Show in black and white, things that I haven't seen since I was a little kid. When I turn it on, it's like you never left Mayberry, isn't it? I mean, there's Andy and Barney and Opie and Goober and Aunt Bee, and it's like they're all family. That's what my lizard, well, it's not lizard, it might be lizard brain, telling me they're family, but it feels good. And there's also good evidence that being exposed to stories of compassion and empathy increase compassion and empathy in us, at least for a little bit. It's why folks go down to the theater district every year, beginning very soon, to start watching A Christmas Carol, which will be sold out, show after show. Spoiler alert, just in case you haven't heard, the grumpy guy, Scrooge, turns out being a real softie inside, okay? And Tiny Tim is going to live because Scrooge is going to pay his medical bills, which I never really got because this is England in like the 1850s, so like modern medicine as we knew didn't really exist, so I'm not really sure. Well, I know, it's willing suspension of disbelief. You see, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The point is, we know how the story ends, And we want to see it over and over again, year after year, because there's something in us that wants to experience, at some level, that transformation of compassion and empathy too. So let's see. Listening to good music, gathering with a nice crowd, hearing good stories about the human condition. Where can I find something like that on a regular basis? Thank you. Before we get into comment time, I have just a little postscript. I obviously bit off more than I could chew by talking about. I mean, the subject of human emotions is like that's many books worth. I mean, it's a huge topic. So there's necessary oversimplification and more than we can handle. I think one thing that is really clear to me is that we know very little about emotions. And the more I realize how little we know about emotions and their source, all of us have been exposed to conventional wisdom about emotions and maybe being in touch with your emotions or whatever. But I've just been aware that there's a lot of stuff out there that isn't based on any kind of science whatsoever. A lot of the conventional wisdom about the source and meaning of emotions is pop psychology, not based on any empirical evidence at all. We are in the infancy of understanding the human brain. There is a project going on now called the Brain Activity Mapping Project, BAM, which is like the, it's going to do for our understanding of the brain similar to what the Human Genome Project did for our understanding of DNA. It's going to completely alter our understanding of human experience, I believe. And so there's exciting stuff happening. I think one of the things that we secular freethinkers can do is just be advocates for, number one, stressing the limits of what we understand about how the brain works, and basing what we do know to the best that we can on neuroscience and steer people away from mysticism and pop psychology. I mean, just one little tidbit here. I read in the New York Times Science page the other day that there are communities in the world that have naturally occurring lithium in the drinking water have remarkably lower rates of violent crime and suicide. The research is just, I mean, so they know that's a fact. Now, what are the implications of it? There's a lot of research that has to go, and this is just a for instance. I mean, could we see someday that, like, in addition to having fluoride in the drinking water, we might have a little bit of lithium? Okay, but the thing is, we all are messing with, some people maybe don't like that, we don't want to mess with brain, we're all, every day, modulating our brain chemistry, are we not? Caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, running, exercise, exposure to sunlight, donuts, So whether we know it or not, we are all constantly trying to manage the chemical factory that is our brains, I think. Okay. Any?